Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. In this episode, we're going to be talking about video settings. We all have these amazing cameras that can take beautiful photos, but they're also capable of recording amazing video footage. And so what settings do we need to set up on our camera to get those beautiful, smooth pan shots? We'll talk about 4K, 8K, slow-mo, what shutter speed to use. We're going to be talking about all of these things and more, so stay tuned. I'm excited to get started.
If you are new to this channel, my name is Shannon and I'm a full-time photographer in beautiful British Columbia. Whether you're here to learn, be inspired, or simply enjoy some stunning visuals, you've come to the right place. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos like this. So here on my camera, I've got a Nikon Z9. I have a monitor that will record my display here. So it's kind of neat because you can actually record 4K video of everything that you see through the monitor. And I've done some videos where all of the action that you see is actually recorded through this monitor. So that's sometimes a quick fix for some people, is not only do they see everything on the back here a little bit bigger than, of course, the back little screen that they have on their camera, but they also can record all the action while they're taking their photos. So this is what I'm going to do to record my menu settings, and we're going to go through the whole list of setting up your camera to be able to shoot video. Going to go into menu, and if you have a Z8 or a Z9, you can follow along. Okay, so up into the video recording menu, we have menu banks. You can make all of these custom setting changes and then you can save them to a bank. So say if you are going to be recording wildlife outdoors, you may make a whole bunch of different decisions for the best scenarios for setting up your camera for video of wildlife. That can be in bank A. Bank B can be for landscape videography. Bank C can be for, I don't know, for interviewing and indoors with lights and stuff. Bank D could be for night videography or twilight. So you can save these up so that you don't have to make all of these little individual decisions every time. My destination, I pick it for slot number 2. Slot 1 is for photos. So I have 2 camera slots on the side of my Z9 here. And yeah, I like to keep them separated. That way, rarely do they both fill up. I can just pop out one file, plug it in, and then, slot 1's going to be all photos, slot 2 is going to be all videos, nice and clean, separated. Now, if at any point one camera card fills up, so say slot 2 fills up with videos, it'll automatically spill over into the emptier slot, so slot 1 if it has space available, and vice versa for slot 1 into slot 2. Video file type. Now the first thing you see when I'm on 10-bit here is that Nikon says this format is for video that will be edited on a high performance computer. So if you don't have a high performance computer, you want to shoot 8-bit. Okay, we have 2 8-bit selections here. There's 264 and 265. So H.264 is an older standard but widely used. It compresses video less efficiently, resulting in larger file size for the same video quality, and it's generally easier to process on a wide range of devices. Now, this is becoming a little bit more old school. So again, with H.265, you have a newer, more advanced compression algorithm. It offers up to 50% better compression than H.264, meaning it can produce the same video quality at half the file size, which is really good, which is what we want. It also allows higher resolution, like 4K and 8K, videos to be stored without taking up as much storage. So there's a few things to think about. One, how powerful is your computer? If it's not that powerful, then you want to go with 8-bit and you want to stick with 265. But little asterisks there, make sure that your program that you're editing in can recognize H.265. It probably can by now, but be sure to check that out. Now, if you can edit your files and you want more flexibility with the dynamic range, like the shadows and the highlights, I shoot 265 at 10 bits. And that's great. The file sizes aren't too huge. They're getting bigger at this point, but I got flexibility. It's really great working with them on Premiere Pro. And it's for YouTube, which I'm not shooting an HBO series on a 4 or 8K TV. So that is the decision I always make, is going with 10 bit. Now you could shoot ProRes 10 bit, and now we're getting up into much larger file size that have way more flexibility with color grading and for your shadows, your contrast, all the way up to NRAW 12 bit. Now these are huge file sizes. So the next question is like, well, how much space do you have? I've got two NAS systems. One's a Synology and another one's a QNAP that have like 64 terabytes of hard drive space. So I could shoot in these larger file sizes, and I can store them and I can work on them on my computer. It will slow things down quite a bit more, but it has that capability. If you're someone who's just like me, where you're doing like YouTube videos, stick with 265 10-bit, you'll be happy. Okay, next is frame size and frame rate. Depending on your file type, this might change what it is that you can do with your frame size and frame rate. So, not to go back and forth and confuse you too much, but if you are shooting at 264 at 8-bit, which is the smallest file grade, Nikon will tell you the frame size and rate may change when you switch to this video file size. In other words, when you click on your frame size and frame rate, it changes. All of a sudden, the only thing I can do with this file type is shoot 1080p. I can't shoot 4K, I can't shoot 8K, none of that. Now, as soon as I change it to 8-bit at 265, all of a sudden it unlocks the 4K all the way up to 8K at 30 frames per second. So if you find out you don't have these options for your frame rate, make sure to check your video file type first, make that change, and then go down into your frame rate and see if it's unlocked there. So I stick with 265 10-bit, and then my default is at 4K at 120 frames.
So I like to choose 2160p, which is 4K, at 120 frames per second. This will allow me to do beautiful slow-mo video at like a quarter of the speed. So I keep it selected on there, and say if I want to speed it up to like real time, then I just speed it up to real time to 24 frames per second. Now you can't do that the other way around. If you are recording at 24 frames or 30 frames per second and you want to slow that down, everything is going to be super choppy. Now you might be asking, is there any issues with speeding up 120 frames per second with your video quality? And there are some issues with that, most of which people can't really see. Especially for like YouTube videos, I just shoot it all the time at 120 frames, and I either slow it down or I keep it at normal speed. And most people really don't know the difference. When we get into shutter speed, there's also a right way and a wrong way of doing it, but sometimes people can't really tell the difference between the two. One of them, as you probably know, is motion blur. You know, if I were to move my hand really fast, you'll see some blur in between my hand movement. Well, if the shutter speed is really, really fast, then you won't get that motion blur, which is not as cinematic. It's not as beautiful looking at it. And so there is this rule called the 180 rule, where you double your frame rate. So if you're shooting at 24 frames per second, then you want to shoot at double the frame rate. So 1/50th of a second is going to be a perfect shutter speed for your video that is going to be shot at 25 frames per second. So if you are shooting slow-mo at 120 frames, then you want to make sure that your shutter speed is 250th of a second. Now, what if it's faster than that, like 1,000 or 2,000? Then you're not going to get that motion blur, which is not as cinematic, which might really tick some people off who are watching it, who know the difference and see the subtleties in between one over the other. And most people don't recognize it or don't see it. Now, the biggest thing that they will see is flickering within the video. And I find when I'm shooting with a drone, something that has a small image sensor, maybe the video quality isn't as high in this drone. So when I'm flying, if I'm at a really high shutter speed for my frame rate, I will see these weird little flickering of light. It's almost just like it gets bright and dark really, really fast, like an LED light or something. Video is actually quite slow, which means it brings in a lot of light. And so on a sunny day like today, you can't slow it down far enough. Your aperture is going to have to be closed all the way down. And on a drone, the aperture is, I think it's 1.2 or something. So it's really large. So it's going to be taking in a lot of light. So what you need to do is actually put an ND filter on here to darken the scene to then get the right shutter speed for the frame rate. So there's a few things you have to think about. All right, let's go back into the studio and I'll talk a little bit more about this.
Image area. So this is a full frame camera. I will choose full frame. Now it says that you can choose DX, but instead I have a function key that I set to switch between full frame and crop. And I can go back and forth when I'm out in the field. Cool thing is about that is that when you select crop, you don't lose any video quality. It still becomes 4K at 120 frames, if that's my setting. But I'm now cropped in, which is great. It's like I have two cameras or two lenses, at the flick of a switch. Now down below here, I have this turned on. This is when I do switch to crop, it'll have a little alert. And what that looks like is this. So let's go out of the menu. So I'm shooting full frame right now. Here's my quick selection. I'll go over into crop mode. And up in the top right hand corner, you can see the 2.3 times. It's flashing right now. And it's just letting me know that I'm in crop mode. So many times I'll be out in the field and I'll not switch it back to full frame. I'll be in crop mode and I'll be like, where is the moose or whatever? I don't see anything. It's so zoomed in. And that thing is just indicating, hey, just so you know, you are in crop mode. You need to switch back. So I can just switch back to full frame. And of course, that little flashing 2.3 times is now gone. So I keep that turned on. I think it's a great feature to have. My white balance, this is where I keep it on natural light auto. And I feel like the camera does a marvelous job. So when a cloud comes in, passes over, it automatically balances out to the white balance. So depending on the camera that you have, this little auto setting might not work for you. If you want to be more specific, you can pick other modes here. Or if you want to be very specific, you actually choose the Kelvin that you want. Next is picture control. If you are not doing post-processing work and you want your camera to get the best footage right out of the gate, you might want to select one of these other selections like landscape, portrait, maybe vivid. This will have the camera add in the contrast, the color, to really give you out of camera best color, best look of video. So if you are not doing post-processing work on your computer, you might want to select that. If you are doing post-processing work, flat is the best. Just allow your camera just to get as much detail as it can so that in post-processing you can do all of your color grading, you can add contrast, all of that in post-processing. So I have it select to flat. Next is active delighting. This again will allow your camera to make sure that when you're filming in high contrasting scenarios, so if it's in the middle of the day when it's super bright out and you have really dark shadows, the camera will go ahead and balance out the very bright highlights and the really dark shadows. So if you are not doing post-processing work, you would want to select it to say normal as a default, but depending on if it's really bright out, you might want to up it a little bit higher. Now, I do post-processing work on my computer, so I can go ahead and change the highlights and the shadows in post work. Same with high ISO noise reduction. If you don't have a program like Topaz Labs, which they do for video, to remove noise, you might want your camera to do that for you. So you can actually select low or normal if you are doing some recording during, like, say, twilight. So you don't want that noise in your shadows, so you might want to turn that on. Now, I will say, if you are filming wildlife, you will want this turned off to get the sharpest detail out of the wildlife. When you turn this on, the camera will go ahead and try and smooth things out that it sees as potential noise in, say, the shadows of the fur of a bear or something, right? And it might make it a little bit softer, less sharp for video quality. So I keep this off so I get the really tack sharp video that I want. But again, that's because I'm doing post-processing work and I can remove the noise in post. Now, there's a few selections here that I do have the camera make decisions for me, like vignetting control, I have it on normal, diffraction compensation, I have that on, distortion control, I have that on. Camera does a great job. I don't want to think about it. It just is on. Video flickering reduction, I have it set to auto and it does a great job. Now, if you are filming indoors, like if you're doing, I don't know, a ballroom for a corporate party, all the lights could be LED and they all could be flickering at a certain frequency that when you're video recording, you get all of that flicker in there. When we're recording, we don't want that nasty flicker. And at Christmas time, it is horrible because all the Christmas lights are now LED. So you can actually turn this on so that your shutter speed is all fine-tuned. So if we go into the menu or out of the menu here, and we take a look at my shutter, see how it is right now. I have it set to 1/400th of a second. And if I move it, it goes to 1/320, 250, down to 200. And this, for each click, it's moving a third of a stop for every turn of the wheel. And so with this shutter speed, you might hit a frequency where you're getting dark, and you might get that pulse of the LED light. Now, if we go back into our menu here and I turn that on, if we go back out, watch what happens with my shutter. So I'm all over the map. I'm at, I can't even go to 500. It's 501. It's 497, 493.8. So it's doing all of these micro adjustments to my shutter so that I can fit within a range that doesn't have those LED lights flickering while I'm filming. But now you know that setting's there. So if you are filming during Christmas time and you wanted to get the Christmas lights and you don't want the flickering, you might want to turn that on and pick a shutter speed that works best for the Christmas lights that are out there. Hopefully that makes sense. Let me know in the comments if I explain that correctly or not. But that's what I have set up there. Metering, I just pick matrix. I meter the whole entire scene, and we can talk about this when we're out in the field because this does change depending on what my subject is. Focus mode, again, this changes. We have single point for focus, continuous. which means when I'm holding down my focus button, it's constantly focusing. And then we have full time AF. That's what this Sony camera has right now. If I were to, pick up this right here and put it in front, it's going to automatically focus onto the batteries here. Then when I remove it, it finds my eye and it focuses back on me. That's what AFF has for that camera. Now, when I'm shooting wildlife, I don't have it on full-time autofocus. I know some videographers or some other photographers do. They just allow it to constantly be focusing for their subject or wildlife. I control all the focus all the time, or don't. So I will talk more about these settings in another video, so be sure to subscribe and follow along, because there's a lot of decisions that happen in the field that'll make way more sense about what to choose here. As a default, you can pick one. I pick AFC. Same with area focus mode. This can change when you're out in the field. I have it set to full area. Subject detection, of course, this is going to change depending on what my subject's going to be. Vibration reduction. This might change depending on the lens and camera body that you might have, if you're going to be on a tripod or not. Mine, I keep it on normal. Sometimes I put it on sport. We'll talk a little bit more about that in another episode. Now we're getting down into microphone sensitivity. Right now I have it select to auto. It works very well. But depending on the mic that you have, you might want to manually select it to a certain volume. Attenuator. This is great. I have it selected to on. This will remove any of the big loud noises that might come in and out of my mic. So the camera will automatically reduce the sound if it gets to a certain volume. So if I'm out and I slip on rocks or whatever while I'm recording, those high rock sounds clashing or something like that, it's not going to be blown out during my video recording. So this just keeps everything in line so that you can hear everything and it's not just like blowing out, so to speak. Frequency response. I use wide range because I want to pick up all the sounds of the little birds, the wolf howling, the sound of the creek flowing next to me. So if you aren't video recording nature and you're doing more of a podcast where you're just sitting down interviewing someone, you might want to go for vocal range, where you're removing a lot of the ambient sounds like streams and high-pitched birds tweeting and that sort of thing. And you might want to select vocal range. So that'll depend on what it is that you're recording. Wide range is what I'm going to pick. I, again, turn on wind noise reduction, just keep it down a little bit. I love powering my mic with the mic jack if it allows, if it has that capability of being powered through the jack plugin. Headphone volume, I rarely put it in headphones, but that's what that's there for, and you can select your volume for that. Timecode. So this is if you have multiple cameras set up around a room, say if you were going to do an interview, or if you're filming wildlife from different cameras and you want to switch between different camera angles. Once you get all of the video files back onto your computer, you can select the time code so that everything is lined up perfectly. So that, say if you're doing an interview and you're talking, well, you can cut from one camera to the next because they're all lined up with the same time code.
Now, can I just say that I'm a photographer. I'm not a videographer. I am still learning a lot. And if you're someone who's stumbled on this channel, I want to hear from you. What do you do that's different or the same? I'm learning a lot, and I'll gladly make some changes if it's for the better. So if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. It helps out this channel and this episode. And if you aren't subscribed, think about subscribing. Thank you so much for following along, and I will see you on the next episode. Ciao.